All right, guys, let's look at some more domain and range. Let's kind of incorporate all of the different types of domain and range. Remember, we had discrete and continuous. Discrete, just to refresh your memory, when we talk about discrete, that's when you have a graph, and of course I'm just making this a real generic one with points on it. That's discrete. Continuous is when you have a graph. Here's your x, here's your y, that's a line. So it's going to be some sort of line. So there's a difference between discrete and continuous. So here's our first example. This one happens to be continuous. So if you want to go ahead and sketch this graph, I would recommend that. Remember, we're going to start with our domain. So we're looking from left to right. So when I go to write my domain, I'm going to do that down here at the bottom. I start with a bracket, and I'm going to say, all right, well, I'm going to use x. I see the least value that I have here, this point right here, is -2, 1. So that means -2 is my smallest x value. Well, this is an actual arrow, so that means it continues. So then I know it's going to go all the way up to infinity. Now I know x is my domain. I have basically a dot here at the end. There's not an open circle, so that means it's going to go all the way up to and include -2. And then I have all the way to infinity. Remember, the infinity symbol uses just a less than or greater than symbol. And then we can close this off. Now, domain can also be written this way. In this case, we can also say, all right, well, my domain means that all my x values are greater than or equal to -2. Either one of these will work for our domain. Now let's switch to the range. Range is bottom up. Okay? So in this case, the least value we have here is 0. So the point is at -1, 0. That's what this is. And then again, we have an arrow, so that means it's going to continue up. So when I go to do my range, I have y as my variable. The least value we have is 0. It goes all the way up to infinity. So that's using inequalities. We can also say that all of our y values are greater than or equal to 0. Remember, these two things mean the same thing. They just look a little bit different because they include the infinity symbol. Okay? Let's try going back to domain and range. Now this time, this one's a little bit different because we have a bunch of ordered pairs. So what I'm going to do is label a few of them. I'm not going to worry about all of them because there's quite a few here. So I'm going to start, let's pick a different color. So this will be -5, 4. As I go over 5, up 4. Let's say this one is 2, 1. This one is 1, 4. I know it's not exactly on the 4, but it's okay. We're just going to use some whole numbers. Here I have 3, 9. And we'll use this one right here, 5, 5. I just picked a handful of points. We can use all of them if we want to, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to torture you with that. So we're going to start with our domain values. Remember, we list them in order from least to greatest. So really, I'm going to be working from this direction that way. So if I just look at the first value, I have -5, 1, 2, 3, and 5. Those are all my domain values. Now let's look at the range values. Same thing, except now I'm going bottom up, because remember, it's least to greatest. So the least values I have here, so I have 4 twice, 5, and 9. So when I go to write this, my range is going to be 1, 4, 5, and 9. Remember, we don't have to repeat the 4. Even though it appears twice, we only have to list it once when we write our domain and range. So this one is discrete. Remember, it's a bunch of random points. Right? This one is continuous, so we're going to handle it the same way. I'm going to start with domain. Domain is left to right. So this is my furthest left. This is my furthest right. So that means my range goes from here to here, and it stops. It has a start and a stop. So when I go to write my domain, I guess we don't need to do that. We can start it with a bracket here. My bracket, I'm using x. The least value, which is this point, is -4, and it goes all the way up to 4. So this is the coordinate, 4, -4, 4. And down here, this is -1, -1. It's not relevant to us. And then, of course, this point here will give us 4, 2. So we'll see which ones we're going to use. So our x, the least value that we're starting with is this one here, furthest left, so -4. All the way up to, in this case, +4. And then in between, it does include, so we're going to use the equal sign with those inequalities. So that is our domain. Now let's look at our range. Our range is bottom, bottom, up. All right, so the least value when I start writing my range, start with a bracket, I have a y. My least value is down here at -1. My greatest is a +4, and everything in between. And I do use the equal sign with that inequality because it does include that point. So this continuous graph is good because it has a starting and a stopping point. There are no arrows involved, so there's no infinity to worry about. All right, I think I have one more to show you. So this one is discrete. We're going to write some ordered pairs. So down here, this would be 2, -5. This would be 5, 1. Here, this would be 1, 4. -2, 0. And then -3, 1. So my domain, remember from left to right for our domain. So the domain is going to be -3, -2, 1, 2, and 5. Our range is bottom up. So then for our range, the least value we have is a -5, 0, 1 appears twice, so we'd only have to write it once, and then 4. We'll get some more practice with these in class, but I hope it's starting to come together for you. You'd be happy to know there's actually more to it that I'm not going to worry about, but I feel like you guys are in a good place knowing these types of domain and range.